Welcome friends to another 40k video as we stare into the timeless depths of the warp where all stories are already written. Now witness 40k Duel, where we give their earned dues to some of the greatest 1v1 fights throughout the history of 40k. And for the first episode, how about Abaddon versus Sigismund? First, the tale of the tape. Abaddon has the advantage on the animal additions to his wardrobe because he has borrowed his dad's kitty mitten, the Claw of Horus, while Sigismund wears strict headmistress armour of a warrior who has no need for adornments. Now let's begin. So you have returned, he spoke to all of us, his voice ancient but uncracked. I never doubted you would. His sword brethren were battered, bloody and exhausted. Our warriors facing him were no different. Abaddon was filthy with gore. The souls of those he had slaughtered to reach this chamber circled him, unseen and silent, a halo of smoky misery trailing away into nothingness as the warp pulled them into the oblivion of its maw. Sigismund rose. He held the sword of his office, what the Imperium knows as the Sword of the High Marshals. The black sword, his favoured weapon for so many centuries, was sheathed at his hip. The straightness of his back and the power within his posture surprised everyone. Abaddon stepped forward to meet him and addressed the approaching night. I see time has blackened your armour, as it has ours. Sigismund stopped within blade reach, but neither of them lifted their weapons. I looked for you, he said to my lord. As terror burned in the fires of your father's heresy, I hunted for you day and night. Always lesser men blocked my way, always they died so that you might live. But I have never stopped searching for you, Ezekiel, not through all these long years. Abaddon's rage, ever his greatest weapon and most crucial flaw, had deserted him. I watched him through Amariel's eyes, and he looked ravaged. Don't make me do this, Abaddon said. Don't make me kill you. He even cast his sword down with a crash of iron. Such was his passion. You cannot have lived all of these centuries and seen nothing of the truth, Sigismund. The Imperium is ours. We fought for it. We built it with blood and sweat and wrath. We forged it with the worlds we took. The Empire is built upon foundations of our brothers' bones. The old knight stared impassively. You lost the right to speak of the Imperium when you brought it to its knees. If you loved it as ardently as you claim, Ezekiel, you would not have pushed it to the brink of ruin. My lord overshadowed Sigismund, standing far taller in his Terminator plate. He gestured to the warriors around the room, taking them in with a single sweep of his talon. They were all in black, though fighting on different sides. We are the Emperor's angels, Abaddon said. It horrified me to hear the dark kindness in Abaddon's tone. When he needed his wrath more than ever, he was trying to reason with the one space marine that could never be reasoned with. We didn't rebel out of petty spite, Sigismund. We rebelled because our lord and master played us false. We were useful tools to bring the galaxy to heel, but he would have cleansed us from the Imperium the way he purged the Thunder Legion before us, wiping us all from history like excrement from his golden boots. Sigismund didn't move. He was a statue, his face carved from coloured marble. I am sure some of you are convinced you fell from grace for those pure, virtuous ideals. You have had many centuries within your prison to repeat those claims to yourself, but they changed nothing. Sigismund was a man to whom duty and law were inseparable from living and breathing. He cared nothing for the righteousness of Horus and his cause, back during the time of the heresy, nor now, with Abaddon. He did not call us arrogant. He did not even say we were wrong, because he cared nothing for the whys and wherefores of what we had done. We were traitors, and marked as such. We had betrayed our oaths, we had risen against the Emperor. That was enough for him. He could not or would not see that we had risen against the Emperor for the sake of the Imperium, and yet I confess that seeing him standing there, regal and ancient in his absolute certainty, I felt the same doubt that I sensed in Abaddon. There were as many reasons to rebel as there were rebels. Sigismund remained motionless and said, with infinite patience, "You keep speaking, Ezekiel. Do I look as though I am listening?" I saw the shift in Abaddon's features as he discarded any hope of Sigismund understanding our cause. I saw wryness there as well. He berated himself that he had dared to hope Sigismund would be able to understand why we had turned from the throne. No pity, no remorse. Abaddon said with a smile, "Blessed is the mind, too small for doubt." He did not wait for a reply. He held out his sword, which had been placed in his hand by Zaidu. Sigismund mirrored the gesture in reverse, handing the sword of the High Marshals to one of his housecarls, who moved away with the relic held in reverence. Sigismund drew the black sword in its place, raising it to salute Abaddon with the same cold formality he had displayed unceasingly thus far. Abaddon raised his blade. And now it's game on, friends. Sigismund had the advantage of reach with his long blade. Abaddon held the advantage of strength in his Terminator plate. My lord would fight with weighty disadvantage of the talon upon his balancing hand, but it gave him a devastating weapon if the duel allowed him a chance to use it. Sigismund would be faster in his ornate power armour, but there was no way of knowing how much age had slowed him. Abaddon and Sigismund's blades met for the first time, a skidding clash that sprayed sparks across both warriors. Their crashing blades brought a storm's light to that place of austere darkness. Lightning sheeted across the cracked marble walls and illuminated the stained glass windows, bathing the cold statue faces of Black Templars, heroes in flashes of even colder illumination. Those stone worthies looked on, only marginally more stoic than the watching warriors of both black-clad hosts. In the years after this duel, those of us fortunate enough to witness it have spoken in terms both trite and profound of how it played out. One of Zaidu's preferred claims is that Abaddon led Sigismund the entire time, that our Lord laughed all the while as he toyed with the ancient Black Templar before delivering the death blow. Amariel once described it in terms I preferred, saying that Sigismund was ice and precision, whilst Abaddon was passion and fire. That bore the ring of truth from what I saw through Amariel's own eyes. Sigismund knew something. He knew he would die. Even if he defeated Abaddon, he and his warriors were outnumbered 4-1. His ship still rolled in the void, still burned within as our boarding parties swept through its veins like venom in its bloodstream. But if the battle for the Eternal Crusader was still in doubt, there was no such mystery surrounding the endgame within this chamber. Even if fate or a miracle of faith spared Sigismund, the rage of 40 bolters and blades would not. And Sigismund's age did count against him. It did show. It slowed him, the finest duellist ever to wear ceramite, to a pace that was no faster than Abaddon in his hulking Terminator plate. He lacked Ezekiel's enhanced strength in that great suit of armour, and age and weariness robbed him even further. He was already decorated in the blood of my slain brothers. This was far from his first battle of the day. Were his old heart straining? Would they fail him now and burst in his proud chest? Is that how the greatest of Space Marine legends was fated to end? No, sir. Age had slowed Sigismund, but all it had done was slow him to a level with the rest of us. I did pay heed, of course. The outcome of the duel was never in question, but that did not mean I was blind to Sigismund's consummate skill. I have never seen him fight before. I doubted anyone but the 9 Legions' highest elite could face him and live even now, and at his best, he would have rivalled any that drew breath. Sigismund's artistry with a sword is best summed up by the way he moved. Duelists will parry and deflect to keep themselves alive, if they have the skill to do so, and if they lack that skill or simply rely on strength to win battles, then they will lay into a fight with a longer two-handed blade, trusting in its weight and power to overcome an enemy's defences. Sigismund did neither of these. I never saw him simply parry a blow. For every move he made, blended defence into attack. He somehow deflected Abaddon's strikes as an after effect of making his own attacks. Controlling the rhythm of the fight, even Telemachon, who is possibly the most gifted bladesman I have ever seen, will parry his opponent's blows. He does it with an effortlessness that borders on inattention, something practically beneath him that he performs an instinct, but he still does it. Sigismund attacked again and again, and he also deflected every blow whilst doing so. Aggression boiled beneath his every motion. Yet Sigismund was wearing down minute by minute. Air soared through the grate of his clenched teeth. Abaddon roared and spat and laid into him with great sweeping blows from both blade and talon, never tiring, never slowing. Sigismund, in contrast, grew ever more conservative with his movements. He was tiring beneath the pressure of Abaddon's rage. The spraying sparks of abused power fields now showed his stern features set in a rictus movement. Everything he did was an effort. In so many battles, whether they are between two souls or two armies, a moment arises when the balance will shift for it to go one way or another. When one shield wall begins to buckle, when one territory begins to fall, when one warship's shields fail or its engines give out, when one fighter makes a cursory error or begins to weaken. I saw it happen in that duel. I saw Sigismund take a step back, just a single step, but his first of the battle so far. Abaddon's lightning-lit features turned cruel and confident with bitter mirth, and the book at this point cuts to later in the fight, but we'll pick things up from where it does. "Tell me something," I said, "before I leave." "Speak," Abaddon responded. "Sigismund, how did he wound you?" Abaddon fell silent, the vicious vitality of ambition bleeding away. The black rebreather covered much of his face, and the murk hid some of his expression. But I believe, for the very first time, I saw something like shame flicker across my lord's face. How curious. "He wouldn't die," Abaddon said at last, thoughtful and low. "He just wouldn't die." I did not need to skim his mind for insight. Just from his tone, I knew what had happened. And I should have said this earlier. All of this is from the perspective of a psychic that works with Abaddon. It's the main point of view guy in the Black Legion novels. I'm sorry, his name escapes me right now, but just to let you know, it's not Abaddon skimming people's minds there, it's the psychic. Anyway, Abaddon continues. "It was over before I knew he had struck me. I couldn't breathe. I felt no pain, but I couldn't breathe. The black sword was buried to the hilt, like the old man had sheathed it inside my chest." Ezekiel's voice was soft across the speakers, cushioned by the bitterness and fascination of reflection. His words were almost staccato, whispers, each one a drop of acid on bare flesh. The only way to kill me was to welcome his own death, and he did it the moment the chance arose. We were face to face like that, with his blade through my body. My armour sparked, it failed. I lashed back. His blood soaked the talon. He fell. I remained quiet, letting Abaddon's tail unspool. His eyes were looking through me, not seeing what was, but what had been. And the saga I mentioned earlier is called Chaon. Sorry about that. He wasn't dead, Chaon. He was on the floor, sprawled like a corpse, disemboweled and torn in two. But he still lived. I was on my knees, forcing my dead lungs to keep breathing, kneeling over him like an apothecary. The black sword was still through me. Our eyes met. He spoke. I did not ask Abaddon to tell me. I reached into his thoughts then, tentatively at first, in case he rebuffed my presence. Then I closed my eyes, and I saw the Black Knight, fallen and ripped apart, his sword brethren gone or dead. I did not know which. Red staining Sigismund's tabard, red decorating the deck beneath and around him, red in Abaddon's eyes, misting his sight. Blood, so much blood. Here at the last, he looked, every one of his years, with time's lines cracking his face. He looked upward at the chamber's ornate ceiling, his eyes lifted as if in reverence to the master of mankind upon his throne of gold. Sigismund's hand trembled, still twitching, seeking his fallen sword. "No," Abaddon murmured with brotherly gentleness, through the running of his blood and the heaving of his chest. No, it's over. Sleep now in the failure you have earned. The knight's fingertips scraped the hilt of his blade, so very close, yet he lacked the strength to move even that far. His face was the bloodless blue of the newly dead, yet still he breathed. Sigismund, Abaddon said, through lips darkened by his own lifeblood. He looked at his Hello Kitty mitten and says, "This claw has killed 2 Primarchs. It wounded the Emperor unto death. I would have spared it the taste of your life as well, if you could only see what I have seen." The ruined thing that had been the first captain of the Imperial Fists and High Marshal of the Black Templars spoke through a mouthful of blood, committing the last of his life, biting off each word, ensuring he spoke, each one in shivering, sanguine clarity. "You will speak as your weakling father died, soulless, honourless, weeping, ashamed." Sigismund's last word was also his last breath. It sighed out of his mouth, taking his soul with it. And on that first edition of 40k Duel, we'll wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed the epic battle between Sigismund and Abaddon. Obviously, when you're making videos, you read through the text quite a few times, adding little things, little comments, little bits of humour, like poking fun at the claw of Horus. But I never got tired of reading through this. Really, really cool segment of the book. On that note, friends, I'll wrap up today's video. And in fact, you'd like to see, I don't have any more on my mind right now, but I will come back around to it in the future. It's a really fun video to make, and as much as I love the lore in general and the mysteries, I also love a damn good fight. On that note, friends, I will leave you to your day.